This is In the Trenches, broadcast 6.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today's guest is Clay Hebert. Now, this interview was actually done a few months ago, and in fact was the first interview I've ever done online. It was before I had the podcast, before I had the equipment, before In the Trenches was In the Trenches. But Clay was nice enough to be my first guest, and so here it is, remastered and put into In the Trenches as part of the series. And the reason for that, I think you'll find out when you listen to the interview, is because Clay has a lot to offer. A lot to offer not only to the aspiring entrepreneur, but anybody trying to actually create something. And that's because, well, he'll get into it, but it takes a lot of guts to create anything. So without further ado, here's today's broadcast. Hi everyone, Tom Morkis here from tommorkis.com, and today I have a very special guest. It's Clay Hebert, and Clay has a really interesting story, and we're going to let him go into a bunch of depth and into that story, but I'm going to give some highlights because he's done some spectacular things.
Thanks, Tom.
So he started at Accenture and spent 10 years at Accenture, and then he left corporate America and got his MBA with Seth Godin. Clay then went into building a innovation agency called Tribes Win, where he helps brands lead their tribes. And actually, he's now transitioning over into a new venture called workhacks.com. Also, he has a blog that he runs over at dailysense.com, and I would definitely suggest that you subscribe. He currently is building a startup called Spindos, and you can find it at spindos.com, and it's going to change the way organizations collaborate. And after he's talked to me about some of the ideas he had with it, there's no question in my mind that it will actually legitimately deliver on that promise, which I think is amazing. And so obviously that's a lot of stuff that I just put out there, and it just goes to show you just how much Clay is multitasking and how many incredible things he's doing right now. And we're really going to get into that and how he instigates all these different products and projects successfully. So Clay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I think I'd like to start with just you kind of going into your background a little bit and maybe even discussing work hacks and Spindos, getting into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So from 1999 to 2009, I did big corporate consulting at Accenture. First 7 or so years were project implementation stuff, working with clients. And then the last 3 or 4 years, more on the marketing side, more on sales and biz dev, kind of leading our healthcare, part of our healthcare practice with that. It was great. It was as most people know or have heard, management consulting is often long hours and hard work, but you're in the trenches with really good, smart, hardworking people. The part of it that didn't really work for me was I was big into creativity and innovation, and back in 2003, I was flying through the O'Hare airport and saw this strange-looking purple book, sort of the color of your shirt there, on the airport bookshelf. Needed another book to read for my leg of my flight. It was Purple Cow by Seth Godin, and it was definitely the first business marketing book that climbed into my head and changed the way I thought, or really resonated with the way that I thought about business. So from 2003 to 2008, I was trying to get some of those things implemented inside of Accenture. But they're, the largest consulting firm in the world. 250,000 people work there. It's not impossible to be sort of an entrepreneur, change maker, linchpin, purple cow inside of Accenture, but that was the battle that I was fighting, and I wasn't able to. I was able to get a few things done there, but not a lot. So at the time, I was living in San Diego. I'd managed to live out there and work somewhat remotely for Accenture. And Seth blogged about an opportunity to study with him, and the title of it was if you could change your life, would you? And here I was, immersed in his stuff, had been reading it for 5 years. Things like Clue Train Manifesto and just the sort of early inklings of all this social networking stuff. Facebook was just starting to get popular. I remember logging on, creating a Twitter account early on in 2008 and figuring that out. And I could see that this stuff was going to change everything. I didn't know exactly how, but I was pretty sure that Accenture wasn't exactly going to be at the cutting edge of it all. So the blog post from Seth was absolute perfect timing. It was exactly I knew I wanted to leave Accenture, but I had this comfortable salary and this kind of comfortable life, even though the work wasn't perfect for me at the time. And a lot of friends there, a lot of people I'd worked with a long time, but the Seth program was a perfect exit to leave. So January 2009, excuse me, I applied to that, got lucky and got in with 8 other amazing people, and packed up my stuff in storage in San Diego and flew across the country and studied 6 months with Seth. I mean, sitting around a conference table with him with 9 people for 6 months was really changed my life.
That's awesome. A great story, and especially the part about making the jump from Accenture into creating your own organization, creating your own business. I feel like there's definitely a lot of fear that's associated with that and a lot of obstacles that you have to overcome to do something like that, to go from something that has a steady paycheck to something that is completely uncertain and potentially littered with failure points and fracture points and just breaking points and quitting points. But you did it. And so what I want to know is, what were your biggest fears and your biggest obstacles that you have to overcome to start Tribes Win, and then to get into work hacks as well? I think that would be interesting to talk about both those a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a pretty clear point of fear when I wrapped up the Seth Godin program. I hadn't quit Accenture. I had taken a 6 months leave of absence during the program, and I wasn't sure if I was going to go back or not. I sort of had small dreams of maybe the program will help me implement some of these things inside of Accenture. So when I was done with the Seth Godin program, Samba, we called it, in 2009, I had this point in time where I had to decide between 2 choices. One was go back to Accenture, make a solid 6-figure salary, back to the life I had, right. Health insurance, comfortable job, move back to San Diego, that kind of thing. Or option B was start from scratch, 0 clients, 0 revenue, 0 health insurance, really truly starting out on my own. And that was a really tough decision, but I took the latter. The safety net that I had was, people kind of look at a lot of this entrepreneurship stuff as like jumping off a building and hoping the parachute opens, and I think that's the wrong way to look at it for 2 reasons. Yeah. I was certainly had that fear, but what really helped me make that choice was the realization that if everything crashed and burned and I went 6 months and couldn't sign a single client, couldn't I go back and get the job at Accenture or Deloitte or IBM or somewhere else? And the answer was, of course. There's my career at Accenture was good enough that I could have gone and gotten a job like that anytime I wanted. So it wasn't really as risky as it seemed at the time with this kind of A-B binary choice. Mm-hmm. It was A is going to be there, so why not take a swing at B? And so now when I talk to startups and I coach entrepreneurs, I teach them that, in some cases they don't have to quit their day job. They can build up the thing on the side. There's a great book by Hugh MacLeod, and it's a bunch of small sort of blog posts, but one of them is don't quit your day job. And I really believe in that with the tools that we have available to us and the ability, you can do it nights and weekends, right? Gary Vaynerchuk talks about it in Crush It. 9 p.m. to midnight, 3 hours, 3 hours a night, a few days a week. And you can build this thing up so that instead of jumping off a building, it's like stepping off a curb, and it's much safer, and it's a much more safe future. So it was scary, but within a few weeks, I'd signed my first client. It was a woman that I had worked with before. It was kind of strange, actually. It was a woman that I'd worked with through Craigslist years ago, helping her with Excel, just through a random gig on Craigslist. And she had heard about the program and asked what I was doing, and I told her I was helping companies with marketing. She was with Alltech Lansing at the time. They make headphones and computer speakers and boom boxes and things like that. So that was my first social media client. And from there, I started working with Sebastian Junger, the author of The Perfect Storm. Yep. And so we built a community site around him, kind of helping him identify and lead and connect with his tribe. We did some cool things there. He wrote a book called War that was all about this small group of soldiers in the Korengal Valley. It had a corresponding documentary called Restrepo. So on his site, on sebastianyunger.com, which didn't exist before, we set up the ability for anyone who read the book to email contactsoldiers@sebastianyunger.com, and that would route to me, and then we would forward it to the appropriate soldier. So the soldiers' privacy and emails were protected because everything came through me. But if they read Sebastian's book and really identified with, say, Brendan O'Byrne or one of the soldiers in the book, they could go to Sebastian's site, send the soldier this email, and I would connect the two, and they could communicate directly with the actual people that they read about in this book. So we did some pretty neat things. It turns out Sebastian he's obviously an amazing writer. The Perfect Storm, War, everything. But some people are just, Twitter is not the right medium for them, and that's kind of the way it turned out with Sebastian. But have done some really cool things, and the clients keep getting bigger and bigger. And now what we found is we sort of transitioned from Tribes Win, and now I work with my girlfriend. We have this company called Work Hacks that you mentioned. We still do a little bit of marketing consulting and social media consulting, but we have zero desire to build a big agency around that. The only way to scale that sort of consulting is to hire a bunch of people, bill them out to the client. And I was like, wait a minute, that's what Accenture was doing to me. And it's just not the kind of business that we wanted to build. We could, with our background, she's got a deep background in marketing and social media as well. And with our background and connections, we could pretty easily build a 10 or 15 person agency, but it's the last kind of business that we want to build. So that's why we're transitioning to Work Hacks, and I'm building Spindos.
I love that. I definitely resonate with how you find what you enjoy, and also the things that you just want to avoid. That's a powerful lesson I don't think a lot of people learn soon enough.
Yeah, Seth talks about a really important distinction, because when I was at Accenture, I thought there was Accenture, i.e. work for the man, work for a big corporate job, or you are an entrepreneur. I thought it was one or the other. And Seth makes a very big distinction between entrepreneur and freelancer. And even though I knew it and heard it from him, it really took a couple years to sink in and realize, the difference for people listening. A freelancer sells their time, and there's nothing wrong. There's no one right choice. It's just understanding the difference between the two. A freelancer sells his or her time, so you're working per hour or per page, or freelance copywriter, freelance editor. And what I realized is the consulting that I was doing with these big firms, I thought I was an entrepreneur. And in the traditional sense or traditional definition of leading and starting something on your own, which is what most people call it, I was an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Well, Seth really makes the delineation of if you're selling your hours, you're a freelancer. And there's sort of a bus test. If you get hit by a bus tomorrow and the business is gone, you're a freelancer. Entrepreneurs take money, usually other people's money, to build something bigger than themselves. So Jack Dorsey at Twitter and Square is an entrepreneur. If Jack Dorsey decides to, go on his yacht for a month, or God forbid gets hit by a bus or anything, Twitter and Square will continue to go on, right? Apple is achieving record profits long after Steve Jobs is gone, because he built this amazing, he's ultimate entrepreneur, built this amazing company with this culture of innovation. So what I've decided is I want to be an entrepreneur more than I want to be a freelancer at this point.
That completely resonates with me. I remember at the Seth Godin, meetup, and when he brought up that point, the difference between an entrepreneur and a freelancer. You can balance these things. You can meld them together too if you want, but it doesn't always have to be 100% one or the other.
I think his point in delineating is, and I think he would say, if you're not Seth Godin, it's better to choose one or the other, because the pain comes from in sort of that limbo where you don't know if you're a freelancer or an entrepreneur. And to be one or the other and to do it well, you make certain choices, right? Mm-hmm. The guys that started, Twitter or pick any startup, they acted like entrepreneurs. They went and got funding and they built it fast and whatever. And there's you can do an internet startup without going to raise funding, like the guys at 37 Signals stayed very small, distributed. They are maybe a little bit in that hybrid. If Jason or David go away tomorrow, 37 Signals still goes on, but they're clearly the two leaders of that relatively small in number but high in revenue company. So that was very attractive to me, and their book Rework, and Getting Real, and their other books and their blog has really impacted me as far as how to build a pretty scalable software platform and keep a relatively small team. So
that kind of transitions too into your venture with Spindos, which is an entrepreneurial pursuit. It's something that you plan to create and grow, and you can make money from it while you sleep, so to speak. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Spindos is it's an enterprise discovery platform. So when I worked at Accenture, after a decade, so when I left to go do the Seth program, I knew about 100 people at Accenture, because you get on a team and you move from project to project within a division, within a division, within a division. And I looked back and I thought, it's pretty strange that I met 100 people in 10 years. And in 120 months, I met less than one new person a month at Accenture. And that really just didn't sit well with me, but I didn't really, have a solution or anything else. And then a few years ago, there was this thing called chat roulette, and it failed for a whole bunch of reasons. And my girlfriend and I were talking and batting around ideas, and she said, I think it'd be really interesting, this video chat thing. I think there's something there. And so we played around with it and thought about this problem that I saw at Accenture, where it's really hard to meet relevant people at Accenture. One of my best friends in the whole world and I met while we were at Accenture, but we almost never met. It was a really random set of circumstances where two different people canceled on this sales meeting. We got there early, sat out in the car, and just from talking, we knew, instant, one of those just connections, were instant best friends. I was in his wedding, that kind of thing. So I want Spindos to encourage a lot of those. So what Spindos is, in a nutshell, is one thing companies are very good at doing is having meetings. So I wanted to use that construct and do something that they already do a lot and they're very good at, but make it a lot more useful or valuable, because they have meetings all day, every day. All the corporate people I know are still, double booked 80% of the time in meetings. But just like me at Accenture, they're not actually meeting any new people, right? They're meeting with people they already know. So Spindos is a video speed networking platform. So if you've ever done speed networking at a conference or speed dating, that kind of thing in person, it's a little bit like that, delivered via a video chat, just like we're doing right now. But it's all based on tags. So I might have the tags New York, VP, marketing, and then you have personal tags like tennis or golf or dark chocolate. You might have the tags Michigan, military, Lions, that kind of thing. And inside of an organization, once everybody's got those tags, Spindos allows people to hold meetings called Spindos, where instead of inviting people to the meetings, you invite tags or attributes. So you could say, I want all the directors in New York in healthcare to meet all the directors in Los Angeles in healthcare, or any combination of tags. You could just say, I want everyone in New York who plays flag football because I want to meet those people, or I want to go golfing or whatever. It's not trivial from a technology perspective, but given the trends that I see, which are the internet gets faster every day, people's accessibility to video chat, webcams, their comfortableness doing what we're doing right now, and tablets. You see the iPad Mini, the Droid tablets, and things like that getting so huge. That I think it's going to be a lot easier for executives to walk around and do this. So there's some kind of specific benefits. Tony Hsieh talks about collisions, right? These serendipitous meetings of people. And so I'm trying to encourage more of those collisions inside of the company. And what's interesting is if you record the meeting, like we're recording this meeting, if you record a 1 hour Spindo with 60 people, it creates 30 hours worth of video, because just like you and I are chatting, there would be 29 other seats of other people that are chatting. Well, if you collect all that and send it somewhere to get transposed and curated and cleaned up, you can create a pretty interesting, 30-minute or 60-minute out of 30 hours of video. You create sort of the Sports Center highlights, and now you've got either a new training module or some really interesting, knowledge management components. So
I think it sounds brilliant. It seems like the kind of idea that once you create it, you're going to find a lot of success with it. To me, it seems like a no-brainer for a big organization. Anything from private organizations to government organizations like the military that are huge and lack that kind of communication across the different branches and stuff like that. It would just be a very useful tool.
Right. And even I think there's a secondary market. I'm definitely going to target sort of large organizations and Fortune 500 first. But I speak at some conferences and I attend a number of conferences. And at a conference I spoke at recently in San Diego, they actually did speed networking where they had everyone line up against the wall and everyone else line up in front of them, and then every 4 minutes click over, which is exactly the experience I'm trying to deliver via video. But every conference I go to, now there's often a private Facebook group, which is great. It's very asynchronous. It's, a little bit better for storing files and things like that. But you don't really meet somebody via their, Facebook profile versus what we're doing right now, which is even if we only chat for 4 minutes, but then the system remembers that we met, it stores all the tags about you so that I can go back and revisit that. I think that's pretty interesting.
It just seems like a resource that would be so useful for so many types of people, so many organizations, but great on an individual basis too.
Yeah, I hope so.
If somebody can get store all that data and keep all that information from, say, a conference like we just had,
right?
Having already been acquainted, to me, I would think that would actually be a great use for it too, because before a conference begins, I think that's incredible. Yeah,
I can imagine before, say, South by Southwest, if you want to connect with certain people and you can browse the tags and the people that have registered, and you could have a Spindo and meet 30 people before you go down to South by, before you go to TED, before you go to a Seth Godin event. Definitely.
If you could give one piece of advice for a recent college grad or somebody who's looking to become an entrepreneur but with little experience, what piece of advice would you give them?
Sure, absolutely. So there's a great book called The Lean Startup by Eric Reese. And Eric Reese learned a lot from Steve Blank, was sort of his teacher and mentor. The biggest thing is you don't need, don't read TechCrunch. You don't need funding, because all the tech startup blogs talk about who raised their Series A round and who got funded or whatever. Don't worry about all that. Get started. There's a great site called LaunchRock. If you have an idea, figure out how to explain it in a paragraph or two, figure out the perfect image that describes it, and then throw up a page on LaunchRock, let's say. Promote it via your social networks, tell your friends or whatever. What LaunchRock does is it collects emails of people that are interested. So you can say that you're building this. You can sort of lie, but you're just testing the market, right? Mm-hmm. You want to create something interesting and unique that nobody else is doing. I wouldn't create, Pinterest for mermaids or these little slices of existing, this for that sort of thing. Right. But things like LaunchRock or just putting on a blog and seeing if people resonate with the idea is a great way to test your idea with literally no investment except for a few hours of time. And if you promote it and only your girlfriend and your mom sign up, you probably don't have a business unless you're going to make your money from your girlfriend and your mom. But if it spreads and people love the idea and you get 1,000, 1,500 signups, then you probably have something and you should pursue it. So I guess I'm talking about people with ideas, and they don't know where they should start. Don't start by learning how to code. Learn how to code if you want to learn how to code. That's great. There's a million resources out there. But what the Lean Startup and all the teachings around it does is teaches you how to get out of the building, they say, talk to actual customers, figure out if people want what they're building. I work with startups, and I hear so many startup ideas all the time. 80% of them are just, I think, insane, but who knows? Prove me wrong. There's been plenty of startups that I thought would be insane that worked out well.
Right.
So I basically say, I don't know, unless I think it's a terrible idea. I say, okay, go talk to your customers. There's a great sort of saying I like, which is define the statement that if it's true, you have a business, and if it's not true, you don't have a business. So are you familiar with Skillshare.com? Does that name ring a bell at all?
I am familiar with that.
Okay, so Skillshare, they had a few different ideas before Skillshare and tried out a few different things. But then they thought about, the core idea of Skillshare. They did what I recommend everybody do, which is figure out the statement that if it's true, you have a business, and if it's not true, you don't. So for Skillshare, that was, will people pay for classes taught by their peers? Because if they prove that that's true, the rest of it is sort of details and where they put the logo on the website and everything else, right?
Right.
In the Lean Startup, they sort of call it customer market fit, or product market fit. So they, for almost no money, put up a simple WordPress landing page, hooked the buy now buttons to Eventbrite. They didn't even have the backend. They used somebody else's backend, which is a perfectly excellent Lean Startup strategy, which is if somebody else has the ticketing thing, we don't have to build that yet. We just need to prove people will pay for classes taught by their peers. So they were their peers. They thought of 3 classes they could teach. They put up the WordPress page and sold out. They sold out all the classes. So for almost no money and a few hours of time, they were able to validate that they had at least a decent business. Now you got to continue to validate and continue to peel the onion and talk to customers and keep going. But if they put up those 3 classes and 0 people signed up, maybe they needed to tweak their marketing copy, maybe they needed to try different marketing distribution channels, but maybe people just wouldn't pay for classes taught by their peers. So they validated that. And there's tools online like the Lean Launch Lab and the Lean Canvas and things like that, where one thing I would recommend they don't do is create the traditional 20, 30, 40-page business plan in PowerPoint that every business school professor will probably tell you to do, and your mom's uncle or whatever your uncle will tell you to do. LeanCanvas.com, LeanLaunchLab.com will allow you to create a really interesting, dynamic, one-page online business plan with a bunch of these hypotheses. So Skillshare could have filled all this out, and one of their hypotheses could have been people will pay for these kinds of classes taught by their peers, and they validated that for very little money so they could move to the next step. So I think that's a really it's hard because you have to start thinking this way, and it takes a little while. But all of the tools and all of the resources are available for free online. On Steve Blank's website, there's a great list of startup tools. That's kind of like the laundry list of everything. It includes LaunchRocket, it includes all these different things. And a lot of them are around testing and validating and positioning, so we can link to that in the show notes. But there's a really, really robust list of tools. But basically, don't start by building, would be my recommendation. Start by validating. Get a clipboard and a legal pad and get out of the building and go talk to people and figure out how can you validate. You got to come up with your idea, and then you got to back up one step and say, how can I prove this? How can I prove this is true? How can I prove people want this?
I love that. I love that attitude and that methodology for creating something. It takes away so much of the ambiguousness of it and the danger and uncertainty of it, because you can test with very little, if any, money involved. Right. Very little risk and a lot of reward.
Absolutely. Yeah, the reward is just as big, and what it does is it completely minimizes the risk. And it's not like opening a restaurant where on day one you're in for $500,000 or $200,000 and your ravioli better be good. You can test out with using these online tools. You can get offline, talk to customers, figure out if people would want this, and if based on their feedback they want something that's close but not quite that, you can do what they call a pivot, which is still the main big kind of audacious goal of whatever, but executing it in a different way. Maybe you execute it by building a tribe or building an email list, or maybe a different technology to reach it.
I like that. That's awesome. How do you maintain focus to bring these ideas to life?
Yeah, well, I would say one of the reasons that some of them are not as far to life as I would like them is because I juggled too many things, and I would not recommend that, and I need to get better myself at focusing. Seth talks a lot about this in the dip of quitting things to focus on the one thing, being the best in the world at that thing. The flip side is we're still doing the consulting to pay the bills and pay for the apartment and buy food and things like that. So it's not this, I'd rather do that than, have to take angel funding. But it's really trying to compartmentalize. A lot of Work Hacks is about productivity and focus and time blocking. So I'll give you a few examples. One is, I love being in New York, surrounded by millions of people. The New York tech startup scene is wonderful. But I could literally spend all week having random coffee meetings with different startups who want to talk like what we're talking about. And obviously then I don't get anything done. So what I've decided to do, it's one of the posts on Work Hacks. If people want to meet with us for coffee and kind of pick our brain, we say, okay, Tuesday from 3 to 5, we camp out at this particular coffee shop. If you want to meet and chat, here's the calendar. You can book a 30-minute, window on Tuesday from 3 to 5 p.m. at this coffee shop. So what it does is we know every Tuesday, if anyone's booked a time, we'll go there and work there. And it takes the answer of 17 random coffee meetings off the table. It just says, we'd love to help, but, this is how we sort of organize that. So that concept of time blocking and even day blocking, there are days that I only work on Spindos or days that I only work on Work Hacks, for instance. So that really helps with focus, I think.
I can't wait to implement some of those tools in my own life. Right now, it's kind of the 20-hour day, and that's I'll work on it.
That's hard. I mean, it's a lot of this brain stuff that we've been reading about. It's pretty hard to maintain that at 20 hours a day. And I know you're doing a lot of different things as well, but it's hard to sustain that for a time. It's one thing to, if you have a big software launch or something like that, to pull some all-nighters and pull some long things, but it's not sustainable. Steve Blank actually talks a lot about that too in some of his courses. He says, you got to get your sleep, got to get your rest so that you can ship, as you say.
Well, I love it. I just want to say this conversation's been awesome. I really could talk for hours, but again, that wouldn't be a very effective use of our time to bring this stuff to life. But again, check out Clay, workhacks.com or Tribes Win or his blog, Daily Sense. Check out Spindos. He's got a lot of stuff going on. Connect with him. He's awesome, and you can learn a lot. And I honestly can't wait to dig into Work Hacks a little bit more. I think that's excellent. A lot of what I write about is how the brain, the neural networks in our brain work, and how that actually applies to habit formation and things like that. And so, love it. Love the topic. Love everything about it.
Awesome.
So, thanks again, Clay, for stopping by and talking with us. I really appreciate it. I know the audience does too. So,
awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. It was an absolute pleasure.
And that wraps up broadcast number 6. If you want to find the show notes, just go to www.tommorkes.com/broadcast6. That's the number 6. As always, this is Tom Morkes, and if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the Resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkes.com. Never fight alone. Join the Resistance.